Welcome you all to my class. Today we are going to discuss about the medical and ethical issues in obstetrics and gynecology. So before starting about the issues in obstetrics and gynecology, let us know about the principles of ethics. So what are the principles of ethics? Principles of ethics includes first point is the beneficence. Beneficence is to act in the best interest of the patient and to balance benefits against the risk. So these benefits that the medicine is competent to seek for patients are the prevention and management of diseases, injury, handicap and unnecessary pain and sufferings, and the prevention of premature or unnecessary death. So this is called as the beneficence. Beneficence means doctor should act in the best interest of the patient and to balance the benefits against the risk. Okay, so this is a beneficence. It is one of the principle of ethics. Next is autonomy. What do you mean by autonomy? Autonomy means to respect the right of the individual. Respect for autonomy enters the clinical practice by the informed consent. That means it is the right of an individual to know about the condition. So this, and before that, for that only we have to take the informed consent, or you can say the written consent from the patient. This process usually understood to have three elements. First is the disclosure by the physician to the patient's condition and its management. First we have to explain to the patient about the condition and its different modes of management, different methods of management, and understanding of that information by the patient. So it should be explained in patient's language if possible. The condition of the patient to their attenders and to patient to be explained in their own language, and then understanding of that information by the patient and a voluntary decision by the patient to authorize or refuse treatment, and the decision should be given to the patient and their attenders to authorize or to refuse the treatment, whether they want to do the treatment. Before that we can explain them the condition of a patient, the different methods of management, the risk involved with it, and then we have to take a informed consent. Then it should be a voluntary decision by the patient. Doctor cannot take the decision, but they have to explain the patient, and if the patient is ready to take the risk, then we can start the treatment, and patient has the right to refuse the treatment also. So this is called as autonomy. This is the second principle. And another principle of ethics is the non-maleficence. What do you mean by non-maleficence? Non-maleficence, it means that a health personnel should prevent causing harm and is best understood as explaining the limits of beneficence. It is commonly known as first do not harm. So this rule is to be always followed, that a health personnel should never cause harm to a patient. So this is called as a non-maleficence. This is one of the rule of ethics. And next is the justice signifies to treat patients fairly and without unfair discrimination. See, doctor should not do any discrimination with the patient, like depending on the caste, religion, or race, ethics, etc. things. So the justice means to treat the patient equally, fairly, without doing any unfair discrimination, and there should be fairness in the distribution of the benefits and the risk. Medical needs, medical benefits should be properly weighted. Suppose if different caste peoples are there, different race people are there, so doctor should not do the partiality. Okay, I mean to say, if doctor should look the patients equally, there should not be any discrimination. So this is called as a justice. Next is the confidentiality means it is a basic of the trust between the health personnel and the patient. So doctor and the patient should all these confidence should be there in between, and the things should be kept personal. So by acting against this principle, one destroys the patient trust. So if a doctor keeps the things with in between the doctor and the patient itself, so this is a main principle to otherwise he can destroy the patient trust. So confidentiality is one of the principle. Then coming to the patient's rights. What are the patient rights? The right to be treated with respect and dignity without reference of age, marital, social, economical, ethnical, national, political, mental, physical or religious status. See, the patient has a right. Doctor or a healthcare personnel should treat them with respect and dignity without seeing all these points, without the reference of the age, marital, social, economical status, ethnic, national grouping, political differentiation, mental, physical, and religious status. The right to use informed choices is a care by having access to the relevant information upon which decisions are based. The right to freedom from the starting from the concern in the decision making. So these are the patient's right. Patient can make the decision about the hair treatment. The right to accept or to refuse the treatment. Patient can also refuse the treatment. If he is not willing for that treatment, he can refuse the treatment. The right to full disclosure of the financial factors involved in her care. So he has a right to ask the financial factors, means how much billing and all will be there. So this is all the patient's right. The right to know who will participate in her care and obtain additional consultation of her choice. So she should be given the right to participate, like who is going to treat her, and the additional consultation of her choice is to be done. So the patient has the right not to be abandoned, neglected, or discharged home care without any opportunity to find other health provider. So they have the rights that without getting the opportunity to find some other doctor, they should not be neglected or discharged. The right to absolute privacy except where this right is preempted by the law. So they have the right of the absolute privacy. Now coming to the legal and ethical principles in the provision of the health services. First is the informed decision making. Patients or individuals who require health care services have rights to make their own decision about the opinions for the treatment or other related issues. The process of obtaining permission is called as a informed consent. The healthcare provider should disclose the following details. The individual is currently assessed health status regarding the general and the reproductive health, reasonably accessible medical, social, and other means of response to the individual's conditions, including the predictable success rate, side effects, and risks, the implications of the individual's general, sexual, and reproductive health and lifestyle, declining any of the options or suggestions. Healthcare providers reasoned recommendations for a particular treatment options and their suggestions. Autonomous persons are those who in their thoughts, work, and actions are able to follow the normal choices of their own without external constraints by other. It is to be noted that autonomy is not respect for patient's wish against good medical judgment. Simply put, a health provider can refuse a treatment option chosen by the patient if the option is of no benefit to the patient. Surrogate decision making. Surrogate decision makers or the parents, caregivers, guardians may take the decision of if the affected individual's ability to make a choice is diminished by the factors such as extreme youth, mental processing difficulties, extreme medical illness, or loss of awareness. So we call the surrogate decision making, or you can say the attenders who come with the patient. If the patient is not able to decide, suppose if she is too young, or you can say she is not matured, or some mental problem is there, that means not disoriented, or such a thing, like if they're suffering from extreme medical condition where she's unconscious or unable to take her decision, or loss of awareness, she's disoriented. In such case, the surrogate decision makers, like they may be her parents, her guardians, her caregivers, can take the decision. So this is called as a surrogate decision making. Privacy and confidentiality. A patient's family, friend, or spiritual guide has right to medical information regarding the patients unless authorized by the patient. So patient's relatives can ask the especially close family member can ask, they have the right to ask or know about the patient medical information unless the authorized by the patients. Unless if patient says not to explain or exposed their problems with the relatives and all, then only you cannot. Otherwise, they have the rights to know about the patient's health. The following points of confidentiality are to be kept in mind. Healthcare providers' duties to protect patients' information against unauthorized disclosures. Patients' right to know what their healthcare providers think about them. Healthcare provider duties to ensure that the patients who authorize release of their confidential health related information to others exercise and educate informed and the free choice. Third is the competent delivery services. Every individual has a right to receive treatment by a competent healthcare provider who knows to handle such situations quite well. According to the laws, medical negligence is shown when the following four elements are all established by a complaining party. First is a legal duty of care must be owned by a provider to the complaining party. Breach of the established legal duty of the care must be shown, which means a healthcare provider has failed to meet the legally determined standards of the care. Third is the damage should be shown. Fourth is the causation must be shown. Next is the safety and efficacy of the products. Healthcare providers are responsible for any accidental or deliberate use of the products that differ from their approved purposes or methods of use. For instance, the dosage level for the drugs, look for the drugs contraindication, drug expiry, damage of the diluted sterilization solvents, etc. So these all products should be efficient and safe. Otherwise, the healthcare providers are responsible for any deliberate accident or the use of the products. Fifth point is the code of ethical midwifery practices. Midwives' rights, the right to refuse care to patients with whom no midwife or patient relationship has been established, the right to discharge patient from her acre or from her hospital provided adequate information from the patients upon which caring is based, the right to receive honest relevant information from patients upon which care is based, the right to receive reasonable compensation for services rendered. Now coming to the ethical decisions and reproductive health of women, ethics in the gynecological practice. Beneficence-based and autonomy-based clinical judgments in gynecological practice are usually in harmony, like management of ruptured ectopic pregnancy. Sometimes there may come into conflicts. In such situation, one should not override the other. Their differences must be negotiated in the clinical judgment and practice to determine which management strategies protect and promote the patient's interest. Ethics in the obstetric practice. There are obvious beneficence based and the autonomy based obligation to the pregnant patient, while the health professional's perspective on the pregnant woman's interest provides the basis of the beneficence based obligations. Her own perspectives on those interests provided the basis of autonomy based obligations. Because of insufficiency developed central nervous system, the fetus cannot meaningfully be said to possess values and on its interests. Therefore, there is no autonomy based obligations to the fetus. Ethics and assisted reproduction. It involves many issues like donor insemination, IVF, egg sharing, freezing and storing of embryos, embryo research, surrogacy. Still, many ethical issues are involved in IVF. First, there is a big question whether the in vitro embryo is a patient or not. It is appropriate to think that it is a prevital fetus and only the woman can give it the status of a patient. Hence, pre-implantation diagnostic counseling is non-directive and counseling about how many embryos to be transferred should be evidence-based. Donor insemination raises the issue whether the child should be told about his genetical father or not. Egg sharing is also surrounded by many ethical issues. Ethics changes from time to time, keeping pace with the changing social value, the surrogacy issue being example. It was considered unethical few years back. Now in recent issues of India today, a lengthy article has appeared supporting surrogacy with the name of the center, the photos of the physician and the number of happy surrogate mothers. But before it was considered as some problem, like they used to hide the things, but nowadays they are explaining the things. So next, ultrasonography. Kya ultrasonography, there are many issues involved like competence, referral, disclosure, confidentiality and routine screening. The foremost issue is that the sonologist must be competent enough to give a definitive option. Now, routine screening is adopted at 18 to 20 weeks, but prior to screening, the prenatal informed consent for sonogram must be taken. Strictly confidentiality should be maintained. Then genetics and ethics. The process of genetic research raises difficult challenges, particularly in the area of concern, community involvement, and commercialization. However, it must be recognized that many of these issues are not unique to genetics, but rather represents variations and new twists on problems that arise in other types of research. Results of the genetic research should be provided to subjects only if the tests have sufficient clinical validity. Results should never be disclosed to relatives except in cases of pedigree research. Next, policies regarding disclosure of the test results should be included in the informed consent process. The genomic era poses challenges for the international community and the research. Then, Council for International Organization of Medical Sciences guidelines should address the ethical issues of the genetics. The goal is to care and protect the greatest source of human sufferings and premature death, and to relieve pain and suffering caused by the disorder. Conception and the young girl. Sometimes the teenage girls request for oral contraception. They are already in an active sexual relationship. They do not want that their parents should know about them taking contraceptives. For laser, the ethical recommendation includes: we should assess whether the patient understands advice. We should encourage the parent involvement. We should take into account whether the patient is likely to sexual intercourse without contraceptive treatment. We should assess whether the physical mental health would likely to suffer if the contraceptive advice is not given. Next is about the embryonic stem cell research and ethics. This involves many ethical issues, and first and foremost is it is destroying a life by destroying the fertilized embryo. So this raises the fundamental question of when life starts. Does human life begins at the gastrulation, or at neurulation, or at the moment of consciousness? When can embryo first feel pain or first suffer? The goal should be minimize the exploitation of human embryos at any stage of development. The impact of law on ethics. Ethics is involved with moral judgment and the laws, however, concern public policy. At one level, it defines what one can, cannot, or must not do to avoid the risk of legal penalty. Ethics encompasses much more than law. Ethics can determine what is right in the sense that it is good. The intention of law is to define what is right in the sense that it is and not permitted. It can be safely concluded that not only in the determining that something is unethical, either a necessary nor a sufficient reason to make it illegal, but also determining that something is lawful does not necessarily make it ethical. In many occasions, the law assists clinical decision making by setting parameters which helps both the patient and the physician. Next, about the medico-legal aspects of the obstetrics. Reasons for obstetric litigation: displeasure against medical professionals due to lack of communication, poor attitude or more so because of a poor outcome or causative factors for litigation. Potential areas of litigations in obstetrics includes APH, antepartum care. First, here the history collection. Recently, preconceptional care is stressed more than only the antenatal care, especially when viewed in the context of its effect on pregnancy. History taking right from the age of the patient with the relevant complaints and the relevant past and family history with a special reference to the obstetric care is very important. Only history can be a clue for further diagnosis and management of many cases. Avoidance of any relevant factors cause maternal and the fetal hazards. Next, diagnosis. Clinical diagnosis of early pregnancy must be confirmed by biochemical or, if possible, necessary by the ultrasonography USG. Next, the investigation. One must not forget to do the routine checkup in pregnancy like HB, ABO, RH grouping, blood sugar, HbS, Ag, VDRL, HIV. HIV testing must be done only after informed consent. Otherwise, the patient may show the doctor. Then high risk pregnancies are only picked up by thorough history taking, routine examination and investigation. High risk patient and failure of timely referral creates a medical legal problems. Then subsequent visits, antenatal screening for the congenital anomaly should be done. In patient having the history of congenital abnormal babies, at least basic screenings are very necessary to avoid litigations. The basic screening is mostly done by USG. Other investigations like CVS, amniocentesis or some biochemical investigations may be necessary depending on the individual case. Patient's counseling is very necessary regarding the false positive and negative tests, thereby avoiding the legal problems. Next, about the intrauterine growth retardation IUGR. Apart from the clinical suspicion of IUGR, modern gadgets like ultrasonography, CTG and the ultrasonic Doppler study to detect the and diastolic flow volume are important. Failure of timely detection of IUGR may cause intrauterine fetal death and the doctor may have to code for this reason. Then multiple pregnancy, it is a high risk pregnancy involving two fetal lives. Management problem is such a case may cause fetal complication which will invite again the legal problems. Then intrauterine fetal death IUFD, the cause of IUFD must be explored as routine autopsy in India is not performed and unexplained fetal death may impose problems of the medical litigation. The next is the Sex Selection and PNDT Act. In view of the falling sex ratio, the Indian government promulgated the Prenatal Diagnostic Techniques Act in 1994. This test was evolved to identify the genetics and the congenital abnormalities in relation to the sex. Unfortunately, this test was misused. Prenatal sex determination and the selective female feticide became widespread all over in India in spite of the amendment of PNDT Act in 2002. The Amendment Act provides unnecessary sex determination, which prohibits the unnecessary sex determination without any disease problem, and it aims at preventing the selective abortions of the female fetuses. However, still unethical practice of selective abortion is going all over the India, which is wrong. Intrapartum care, proper intrapartum management during labor is essential for a healthy mother and a healthy child. In majority of the mothers, there is spontaneous onset of labor. Injudicious administration of the oxytocins was the primary reason in 33% of the cases. Randomized control trial of EFM and the auscultation of the fetal heart rate found that an increased incidence of cesarean section and the decreased neonatal seizures in EFM groups, but no effect on the cerebral palsy or the prenatal deaths. Newer methods like pulse oximeter or the fetal electrocardiogram analysis can prevent the birth asphyxia and thus minimize the litigations. Cesarean section, with the advent of CPA, there is an increased incidence of the cesarean section. The WHO global study in 2005 revealed that high rate of cesarean section does not contribute to an improved pregnancy outcome, rather is associated with the increased maternal morbidity and mortality with higher incidence of newborn illnesses due to low birth weight. Delayed decision of cesarean section must be avoided as this may lead to undesirable situation like obstructed labor causing maternal and fetal morbidity and mortality. Difficult vaginal delivery. In case of shoulder dystocia, various clinical risk factors like diabetes leading to the big baby etc. must be identified to predict and prevent this condition, and associated injuries like Ehr's palsy etc. But if we face such situation in emergency obstetric care, it must be tackled by the experienced obstetricians, otherwise litigation problems are there. Breech delivery, timely decision is to be taken whether to deliver the breech by vaginal route or cesarean section as to avoid the legal problems. Multiple pregnancy involves enormous risk and modern concept is to be delivered by the cesarean section. Then instrumental delivery, forceps vacuum. High forceps must be avoided. Only low forceps can be indicated in the special circumstances to expedite the labor process. Ventos must be avoided in premature baby and the fetal distress. Concerned personnel must be sure due to untold effects like facial palsy and visual injury of the mother and the baby. Emergency obstetric care. Every year more than 5 lakh women die during childbirth in the world, out of which 1/5 women die in India alone. With present situation when there is no improvement of the infrastructure, yet doctors have the risk of facing medical legal problems regarding this emergency obstetric care. Then postpartum care, postnatal complete perineal tear, obstetric and anal sphincter injuries, significant perineal pain, dyspareunia, maternal morbidity, mortality, and anal incontinence are problem areas. Forceps delivery is associated with the increased perineal injuries, perineum injury to the perineum. Patients must be consoled about the risk of anal sphincter injury when operative delivery is conducted, so to avoid the litigations again. The prenatal morbidity, brain damage, any neurological and psychological deficiencies is a major litigations issues where compensations are claimed. A health professional must be sure if it can be proved in the court that the brain damage has occurred during intrapartum period due to negligence of the health professional. Damage to bones and the viscera. This may occur especially during the breech delivery. Health professional must be very conscious during face, legs and arm delivery in breech. Analgesia and anesthesia. Expert anesthetist is required to prevent the medical litigations. Drugs in pregnancy and lactations. Though only a small group of drugs are known to be harmful to the fetus, but it is a wise precaution to avoid vast majority of the drugs if not genuinely indicated, that is if there is less evidence of fetal safety. FDA recommendations of the drug should be followed. The health professional must not use off-licensed drugs. If damage occurs, he will be blamed of negligence when a licensed alternative drug is used. Ethical issues in surrogacy. Surrogacy is possible by AID, artificial insemination, donor, and IVF, where a child is born in another mother's womb. A lady without uterus but functioning ovaries can have a child with the help of a surrogate mother. According to Fertilization Act 1990, the carrying mother is the mother-in-law. Genetic mother can get legal parenthood by legal procedures only. Surrogacy for convenience only when the woman is physically capable of bearing a child is ethically unacceptable. HIV positive women and pregnancy. In an overwhelming number of cases, children of HIV positive women acquired the infection before or around the time of birth or through the breast milk. The risk of vertical transmission can be potentially reduced to less than 2% by the judicial use of combination antiretroviral therapy during pregnancy and labor, delivery by cesarean section, and avoidance of breastfeeding. The legal standard of the care in prenatal care and the child birth is entitled to an HIV positive woman if she decides to continue the pregnancy. Neither the woman nor her child should suffer any discrimination on their HIV status. See, potential areas of litigation in gynecology includes intraoperative procedures, which constitutes about 32%, failure of diagnosis or delay in diagnosis 17%, failure to recognize complications 7%, failed sterilization 6%, failure to warn or inadequate concern, failure to warning should or the concern is not taken proper is of 3%. Examination of a gynecological patient, professional and personal conduct. Not infrequently, the midwife has to face the charge of physical and sexual assault prior to examination. Consent must be taken and she must be informed about the nature of examination. Examination should be done in a closed space in comfortable position, maintaining the privacy in presence of a female attendant. Attendant should not be the relative of a patient. Forensic gynecology, sexual assault and the rape must be handled in a sensitive manner while complying with the forensic procedures. Domestic violence and the sexual violence in areas of conflicts are now recognized as the major factors in women's health as studied by the United Nations and by the Human Rights Group. Consent form is the single most important document created in the presence of a patient, which removes obstacles to effective communication concerning choice. The key to effective communication is engaging with the patient, empathizing with her needs, educating her as to the available options, enlisting her approval for the appropriate choice. Only after engagement, empathy and education, it is appropriate for a clinician to ask for the approval of the patient. It will always be appropriate to record the decision. It will sometimes be appropriate for the patient to append her signature to an appropriate form. Valid consent must be taken from the patient. Diagnosis of gynecological diseases. No step should be omitted in history collection and the clinical examination. Investigation procedures should be suggested as needed. Opinion of other specialties sought in doubtful diagnosis before instituting the definitive therapy. Medical termination of pregnancy. Complications of abortion sometimes lead to the complaints and litigation. The act was legally enacted in 1971 and implicated in April 1972, an amendment from time to time. The basic principle is that pregnancy can be terminated when there are some maternal and fetal indications, and in India it is to be done before 20 weeks. Legal problems occur in certain conditions as follows: continuation of pregnancy after the procedure, excessive or continued bleeding due to incomplete evacuation, injury to the organs, either to the uterus or to the other organs, failure to diagnose ectopic pregnancy while performing the MTP. Death following any procedure. MTP done by a non-authorized person, MTP without proper counseling and informed consent, termination knowingly after 20 weeks of the pregnancy. Conditions under which pregnancy can be terminated includes: continuation of pregnancy would never involve a risk to the life of the pregnant woman or grave injury to her physical and the mental health. There is a substantial risk for the child born to suffer from such physical or mental abnormalities as to be seriously handicapped. Pregnancy resulting from rape and from the failure of contraceptive methods constitutes the grave injury to the mental health of the woman. Actually, a woman's foreseeable environment should also be taken into account in determining the risk to her health. Experience or training required for MTP. For medical practitioners registered in a state medical registrar immediately before commencement of the act, minimum experience of 3 years in the practice of OBG. For practitioner registered on and after the date of commencement of the act, 6 months of house job in OBG and 1 year of experience in the practice of OBG at a hospital, or if the person has assisted a registered medical practitioner in performing 25 MTP cases in an institute approved by training by the government, postgraduate degree or diploma holder in OBG. Female sterilization. Failed sterilization and the concerned wrongful pregnancy is historically the single operation most likely to give rise to litigation. Two aspects of sterilization failure attract litigation: inadequate consent and the defective surgery. Failure. Spontaneous recanalization is rare. In case of male sterilization, if contraceptive support is not educated immediately after vasectomy, then conception may occur. Incomplete occlusion or traumatic occlusion may give rise to failure. Sterilization, when performed without diagnosing an existing pregnancy or done in a secretory phase with an existing preclinical pregnancy where implantation has just taken place, may result in a pregnancy. Ligation of wrong structures, that is round ligaments, can also lead to failure in such cases where legal threat is high. Then ectopic pregnancy, there is always a less chance of ectopic pregnancy after sterilization operations. Injuries, though not very common, injuries to the bladder, bowel or large blood vessel may complicate the procedure. Sterilization in emergency condition, risk of legal problem is more when sterilization is done in an emergency condition without adequate counseling prior to sterilization. Contraception IUCD, perforation of uterus, expulsion of the device, confirmatory proof should be obtained. Complications of IUCD and IUCD failure. Oral pill. Pill failure or missed pills is an usual factor behind contraceptive failure. Proper demonstration is needed. Equally important to inform the user about the minor short-term and major long-term side effects of the pills. Injectable contraceptives. High incidence of amenorrhea and irregular menstruation is poorly accepted by the women. Pros and cons to be informed. It should be remembered that if free choice should be adopted for the selection of the method of contraception provided the acceptor has no contraindications. Endoscopy surgery, which is commonest nowadays, it is a common cause of complaint. Diagnostic laparoscopy remains a common cause of complaint. Possible risks should be explained to the patient. Infertility and ART. Assisted conception is replete with the ethical and legal problems involving the law case and the law. There is increasing litigation following the adverse outcome of the multiple pregnancy, with criticism of poor counseling and over optimistic forecast, especially in the financial driven private sector. The replacement of more than 2 embryos is not recommended by the Human Fertilization and Embryo Authority. In the management of infertility, various investigation procedures are needed. The patient must be explained. The patients may need maximum physical, mental, and financial contribution. The couple should be informed about all these things, and they should be explained about the different methods of treatment applicable to them, with the success rate and the possible hazards. Now coming to the now let us see the ways to minimize medical legal problems in the obstetrics and gynecology. Awareness of the medical legal problems. Health practitioners should be aware about the changes in laws that may influence the practice. Code of ethics. The code of ethics for the midwife or the gynec should be followed. Good interpersonal relationship and the clear communication. Proper counseling. Good counseling should be there, which boosts the confidence and the faith of a patient. Then informed consent. After proper counseling, informed consent should be taken. Standard health services. Improving the infrastructure. Facilities available in the institution should be displaced. Health authorities should set norm for the health sector as a whole. Quality of a care. Good consultant is needed. Also active pre and post operative care needed. Educate training. Nursing education is must. Continuing the education. Regular CME and workshop should be attended. Audits, morbidity and mortality audits should be regularly done. Regular meetings of the staff should be taken. Second opinion or the referral. Timely referral should be kept in mind. Documentation and the record keeping. History, physical examination, drug allergies, chronic medications, plans of management, date and time of investigation done, operative and in investigative notes, records of discussions with patients and relatives, note to be kept of patients not following instructions should be documented. Risk management involves limiting health risk to the patient and also reduce legal risk to the care provider. It does not primarily about avoiding or mitigating claims, but rather a tool for improving the quality of the care. Next is about the public awareness programs and the health education. Public awareness includes the health awareness by the professional bodies and the media. Thank you.